Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
Welcome to the Building Doctor Show. I am your host, Jens Johansson, and I'm glad to see you here to learn more about your building. Today, we're going to be talking about design, and we have Jessica Malurk, J2's design lead, as our guest today. In this episode, we're going to take you through the design process, and you'll have the chance to ask your questions of Jessica and I free of charge. Welcome, Jessica, to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at J2.
I've been at J2 for almost 6 years, and I do all the design, big and small projects across all three of our offices. Walk the boards from beginning to end through the design process.
Yes, and I would say she's really good at colors and visualization of what your building can look like. I love tearing them apart, seeing what's wrong with them, and she gives us the vision to put it back together. So today, as usual, we're going to launch a quick poll here to find out who is in the audience. And let me get that going. This helps us tailor our questions to you. So take a quick second to fill that out. Are you a board member? Are you a manager? What state are you in? Have you been through this process before, etc.? So while that's happening, the usual disclaimers: this show is free, so put away your credit card. We aren't selling you anything. So this show is for educational content only. We're not giving you legal, financial, or engineering advice, and neither of us are medical doctors. We're just people on the internet trying to help you run your building better. We've helped thousands of people with their building problems, and we've seen what worked and what doesn't work when it comes to restoring and running condos. And we want to share that with you in hopes that it benefits you. So stick around for the live Q&A at the end of the show. This is where the participants in the show get a chance to bring your questions to the building doctor. And if it's show specific, great. If it's not, we'll even try to answer them if we have time. So stay tuned for a link if you have some more, if you want to go direct and off channel or off show. There will be links in the episode to talk to either Jessica and I. So Ben will be monitoring the chat. That's where you ask questions of, hey, can you post that link? He'll be posting some links and things like that. But for your questions, put them in the Q&A box and we will get those answered. And if you're watching this on a replay, put those questions into any of the question sections of whatever show you're watching it on, YouTube, etc. We get notified and we can reach back out to you and answer those. So let's see. Let's check poll results. And we've got Washington, Oregon, and Utah represented today. And end poll, share results. Sorry, I've got a little sticky mouse. So plenty of board members, plenty of curious people. And where did you hear about our stuff? Social, newsletter, other. Exciting announcement. We're going to cover it more at the end of the show, but we're now on all podcast channels. So check us out on Spotify, iTunes, etc. So we'll talk more on that. But have you been through a repair project before? Yes, a big one. Yes, a minor one. So, okay, we've got some educated people here. Jessica, let's talk to them about design. So in today's episode, we are going to cover, why even care about design? Specific design elements you should be thinking about, future proofing, we call it. That's kind of extending your lifespan of making some good waterproofing decisions of, if I'm going to replace it anyway, let's do it right so it doesn't need maintenance. It doesn't require a bunch of attention. Material selections, quality of life upgrades, and we'll touch on a few of those. Financial benefits from doing a whole design. What do you think that does to your building value? Makes you the popular, new, sexiest building on the street, so to speak. And we'll talk about renderings and what they mean, and kind of showing the differences. And then there's some challenges in the design process. It's not all fun and rainbows and things like that. We'll share with you our design process flowchart that we take all our clients through and just talk about the bus stops or the milestones through that process. some timelines, and then some permitting. So again, if you have questions, put them in that Q&A. We'll get them queued up and get those things going. So why care about design? For the most part, when we get called in, your buildings are leaking and we've got to get to the water intrusion. We've got to get to the damage. So you're taking that exterior off typically anyway. Now, not in all cases. We can do targeted fixes, but in the complete, what we call in the industry, a strip and reclad, you're taking the old cladding or siding off, fixing the damage, and then restoring on your way back out. And so why do you have to keep it? In this case, this is a church building. Why do you have to keep it looking, 1995? This was top of the line. But what if we did some, made it more modern, made it 2023, 2024? What if we put an entry on it? You can see this, from the parking lot. Here is the grand entrance in the top view there. It doesn't look very grand. So let's draw people's attention. Let's say door is here. Here's the focus. Here's the doorway to come into this beautiful space. And so it's actually a pretty small area here, but it really changes it. And obviously we're updating colors and things like that and some other materials, but that's kind of the power of design. So why care about it? Get a new exterior look. And I think that's fairly self-explanatory. But the next stage, and here's some other mock-ups we have. The next stage is taking your car into the repair shop. I need new tires. Well, the car's up on the lift. The tires are off. Now's a logical time to at least check the brakes, at least look at some things underneath and say, hey, I'm halfway there. What else can I be looking at? So here's what the other things in this exterior envelope are: windows, decks, doors, railings, things like that. Jessica, do you have other things to add to the design element that are important to think about?
I mean, those are the assembly types or the items that we definitely touch base on. And then after that, those are the more functional things of we want the doors to have blinds integrated into them, and what do the guardrails look like? And then everything after that is, aesthetics of siding types and color and material choices. So,
well, I mean, the railings are coming off anyway, and these old railings had 7-inch wide pickets, and kids could stick their heads through and get stuck. And now the code requires, 4 inches of space, or the handrails were too low. Now they've raised the railing height of the guardrails around the decks. Your windows were old aluminum windows, and now they have, modern vinyl or wood or some other, higher energy performing things. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think in this upper case, we have kind of these little hats or eyebrows. Is that just to add a design element, or is that to screen off any kind of roof?
Those were there, and I reduced them significantly. If I recall correctly, I think they were pitched in a triangle shape, and we squared them off to give it a little bit more of a modern look, or maybe it was rounded. We brought it up to date, and it looks much more streamlined.
I could see a round look, kind of looking hotelish. You can kind of get the whatever that motel is, kind of that round look, and Southwest look. And it's like, is this a hotel or is this, condos? And so, yeah, just some different little things. Why do we have that there? What was its purpose? Oh, I get it. Well, we're going to change it because we're changing everything anyway. And we're going to have scaffolding and ladders and all sorts of things set up. And it's very cost incrementally cheaper to do that. So, okay. Let's go on to some exterior design elements. Why don't you talk about this, Jessica?
Oh, there's so many choices that go with the exterior when you're redesigning and reselecting everything. There's guardrail styles, there's guardrail material choices. We'll definitely give our opinion as to what we think would perform best in the location that you're in. Every material has its pros and cons, and so ultimately it's up to the board to decide what works for you, what works for your budget, and what meets design and code intent.
Sure.
So
Talking about railings, you can see this interior handrail at handrail height, but a taller railing at guardrail height. And so when you're walking out your place tonight, kind of see if you have those two. One's a handrail, one's a guardrail. They're both required by code, but they also help, and they're comfortable. I think another thing that we're seeing with a lot of, the economy of deliveries. So everybody's coming to our house now, right? Amazon, DoorDash, Uber, all these people. So in this instance, we had a split entry, so upper and lower. And so here's the address sign with an arrow saying down there. This address is down there. So we were finding packages to the wrong door, and the neighbors got to know each other because, they were exchanging packages every day. And that's just kind of a interesting thing that's become more common now. In this instance, here's a little, this is a, I forgot you can't see my mouse on the other screen. This is a roof over the doorway, and they didn't have it before. So they just really had a wet, drippy doorway. And now we can add on a simple awning to protect the door. Carports are always one of those things. We've got the old wood style with the 6x6 posts, and the wood gets chipped and it rots, and so converting those to metal, very easy, very clean. They don't have to be as big and thick for the wood structures because the metal, we can span greater distances with metal beams. Interior features. Tell a good story about an outdated clubhouse.
Oh yeah, we've had a clubhouse where they had a pool, great location, great amenity. It had a gym in it and bathrooms, and it was horribly outdated, and the lighting was so terrible inside that even when the lights were on, you didn't even know they were on. It was so bad. So we gutted everything. We changed all the finishes, pulled up the flooring, redid. They had a kitchen that was like a community kitchen, new cabinets, new countertops, all ADA accessible. And the lighting was just like the most impactful thing in that. And we can help you with all that stuff.
Yeah. And it turned the space into, a worthless space that nobody would use or would be ashamed to use, into a very cool community space. I think we added some little Zoom room things for people who work from home. Mm-hmm. It really turned into kind of a lively place, and also additional income. You can rent it out to host birthday parties. You can do your retirement party, just all that type of stuff. And so community during the day and rental on the weekends. So it was an interesting, we've done lots of clubhouses like that. Sport courts, some of the, in the 80s, racquetball was really cool. 2023 is going to be defined for the pickleball courts. We'll look back and say, oh yeah, the pickleball courts. But pools, whether they're filled in with concrete or rebuilt into a nice pool, all those things, we can take this outdated or unused and create an exterior space as well. So, okay. Anything else to add to that one? Okay. Future proofing. This is where we're talking about maintenance cycles, and if it's gonna be wet and collecting water and all that stuff, let's make it as low maintenance as possible. So good design doesn't have to just look good. It can last a lifetime and save you on maintenance fees and energy, things like that. So waterproofing, of course, we're focused on with this water intrusion causing the damage in the original place. So we're going to give you a good waterproofing design, but energy efficiency still remains a big thing. And the code continues to drive the energy code, which more insulation, thicker windows, or air more tight is what I'm trying to say. Tighter windows that don't leak as much air. But you get better sound quality, you get better insulation, noise reduction. A lot of people are adding, hey, this didn't have AC and I don't want a window mounted AC. Can you give me some kind of clean port that I can have a portable air conditioner, plug that hose into, and it goes to the outside, and on the outside that port just looks like a dryer vent or something, and we can close it off, make a little door inside. But that way you don't have all these ACs in windows or hoses sticking out, or kind of running all over the place. The pictures we have there, that's a thermal image where you can see darker spots, which is actually, this is a stucco building. You can see the darker spots where the stucco is holding some water against the building. But then you have some hot spots of letting heat through, whether the insulation was a little crooked or missing. But you can see some kind of interesting anomalies there. And what we found in that building was a lot of water damage through the stucco. And it was a 5-year-old building. So, just a waterproofing issue there. And the lower, you can see the snow gathering. There's no head flashings. There's no flashings around beams. The railings are, they're big, bulky timber railings, but they're not per code. And everything needs staining and painting and refinishing and all that stuff. So, we can make some of these exterior elements better, even though we're replacing them anyway. Let's make them better and more efficient. Anything to add to that?
Nope, there's a lot there. Every city's different. So what goes through in Bellingham may not pass in Utah or Seattle. So I think that, the energy efficiency codes are different in each jurisdiction. So there's a little bit of research that needs to be done before anything gets ordered or specified. So what your neighbor or your family member might have might not work in the city that you are located in. So it's just something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, and different climates, different exposures on the waterproofing side of things. Obviously, Pacific Northwest is a little different than our Utah locations as far as dry climate, but Utah has lots of ski resorts, so they get lots of precipitation every year. And so you do get precipitation. Maybe you don't get driving rain or soaking rain, or you got plenty of time to dry it out. But exposure would be another issue of, are you on the beach kind of getting blasted by the Pacific Ocean, or are you tucked back in a hollow somewhere and protected from all this wind? Are you on the top of a mountain, or are you on a big lake? All these different locations and exposures require some thought as well. Okay, so material selection. This is you can talk about this slide.
There's so many options. We have our favorites. We also can make recommendations as to what we feel performs the best in the climate that you're located in. And stucco doesn't traditionally perform super great in the Pacific Northwest, but down in Utah, it does just fine. So there's some materials that we may steer you away from, but we can make any material work. What we also try and keep in mind, the aesthetics and the cost and the maintenance and all the material selections that go onto your building, whether it's the siding and the roofing or the windows, the guardrails. We want to make it as cost effective and easy to maintain for the board and the property management team.
Yep. So pictures here, some different rail styles. If cable rails are those horizontal, they're kind of fun because you don't see them as much. They make great climbing toys for kids. So if you have a younger association with a lot of families, maybe watch out for that one. Glass rails are fun on the views, and if you have a top bar or not. So waterfront, we'll suggest that, but also cost savings. On the waterfront side, glass. On the back side, maybe walkways, just pickets. And there's different levels of security we can play with, and that's just on railings. Fiber cement is a very popular product. We've got all sorts of products that we can use, real wood to I call it the fake wood. What's the polymer based wood that looks like wood? Like
the composite, like the Trex or the AZEK.
Yeah, it has a name to it, but it's gaining popularity, and it's a pretty neat product. Metal, there's all sorts of different cladding types we can use. So And quality of life upgrades. Talk about this.
I've got a lot of requests for this lately with upgrading keypads. There's ones that you can control with your phone. So if you need to let your dog walker in, you can open the door for them. You can make sure it's locked behind them. If babysitters for kids as they come off the bus, they don't even have to have a key to your unit. And we can create families. Some people don't want the digital one or the keypad. So it's like, okay, we can create a family of hardware. So at least it all matches in style and color. But it functions and it has the ability to be upgraded as owners move in and move out. And the smart package lockers are also gaining popularity. There's so many, everybody's getting their groceries delivered nowadays. So they have, locking package lockers that can go inside or outside of the building, but they even have refrigerated lockers now. So you can put your ice cream in it and not have to worry about it melting when it gets delivered at noon and you don't get home till 5. So that's
awesome.
just something that to think about. It's a great benefit. There's some great packages out there. And every company is a little bit different in what they offer.
I think I'll add to that. And sometimes the building department has been watching this old building for a long time, and the fire system is so archaic, and the fire alarm system, that they'll say, you know what, since you're upgrading and doing, X amount, we want the digital fire system, the warning, the alarms, the LEDs, the lock and unlock of the doors and the elevators. We want that updated. And so then we can roll that into entry things and lock systems and alarms and put that whole package together. So everything's on your phone or everything's at one panel. And, the manager gets notified or the one contact is notified of all emergencies. So technology is playing a big part in that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then outdoor gathering spaces. Talk about that.
Yeah, there's a lot. I've done a couple rooftop decks recently that are just amazing, especially the ones that overlook the water. I've had a couple properties that have a great yard space, and I helped them with some space planning. They had sort of a concrete slab, and we did some furniture layouts. We did some, fire pit options for them, bike storage, just general equipment storage for large landscaping and so forth. But there's so many options out there, and we can make anything work for what you guys want to have installed in your property.
Yeah, the community space is becoming a thing again, that it's visible. There's benches or there's hangout places or there's places to sit and read and work on your laptop if you want to, or there's places to kind of sit and socialize. And so gazebos and fire pits. I mean, this was just a bland little spot, kind of brushy, ignored. Put a gazebo and a fire pit there. Put some benches there. Or, I dropped off my daughter at college, and her apartment thing had hammocks and a couple of sport courts, or a couple of, it wasn't big, but it was a horseshoe pit. And it was, I was like, wow, they're kind of thinking of the community. And how much does 3 hammocks cost? How much do they last all season, if not 5 seasons. And, as long as the residents are good to them, it's a nice space. One interesting, it's kind of reverse order, but playgrounds have an interesting, I heard an investor talk about, it was kind of an interesting thing. He was like, I'm having a tough time evicting, or not evicting, but I have some members of the community that, let's see, what's the right way? We're violent to children, and I'd like to get them out of here. And I realized there's a statute that says they can't be within 700 feet of a playground. So guess what? I put in a playground to the community, instantly able to get rid of them. I was like, wow, that's a creative way to kind of clean up the thing. But I was like, well, okay, that's part of design, or part of this outdoor space. It's an interesting twist. So anything else you want to add to that?
Nope, I just think that there's a lot of forgotten areas and there's so much potential. So don't forget about that side yard or that roof deck that nobody uses because there's no furniture or the furniture's all rusted. And so even though it's not technically, it's more of an amenity space, we can definitely roll it into the scope of work to see, what it would cost to outfit it and make it
Right.
a usable space again.
Yep. Okay. Does any of this stuff sound fun? Usable spaces. You can take a picture on your iPhone. You can send it to Jessica. Here's her email address, jessicam@j2consultants.com. Here's her desk phone number in Utah. And she would be happy to get on a free call with you and just talk about, hey, what can I do here? Or how does this design process work? I heard your show, and I just have some ideas before I commit. So reach out to Jessica. Okay, financial benefits. Talk about this.
Oh goodness. I mean, there's so much new construction in all three states that we're in. I mean, we're in other states as well, but our main core areas, of Washington, Oregon, and Utah. There's so much new construction, especially down in Utah. It's just booming. And so it's now some of these, these older buildings need to start competing with the new construction that's going up next door. And so that doesn't necessarily mean you have to knock it down. Like new siding can do wonders, and even paint there's just a huge aesthetic difference between, the old boring brown stucco. And if we painted it, sharp colors, black and white, lots of drama, it just freshens it up completely. And so I think, now your old property that now looks new can now compete with these new construction. And, these older properties, they've got great bones. They don't build buildings like that anymore. Yeah.
They're bigger. They're bigger square footage. They have bigger garages. They have two spaces per place. They've got amenities. The new places don't have any room for any amenities, and they're slammed in there, and they're small. I would much rather have a big, spacious 2-bedroom that looks sharp and has a good raincoat on the building. I can move in. I don't have to worry about it. And, my reserves are low because I'm not always fixing the stucco and Marblecrete and this deck stack and that deck stack, and I'm being nickel and dimed. I haven't paid off the last assessment, and I'm getting another one for some other building's roof or something. And so looking at the financial benefits of, let's bite the bullet. If we do it all at once, we can get a payment that we can afford. There's banks that'll help us. And it's actually a pretty easy process, but I think this is a wonderful before and after. Has that one been finished yet? I think this is
they're going to be starting construction soon.
Okay. Yep. And so, just the appreciation in property values. Granted, property values are down a little bit now, but what is it, a kind of a tired, sleepy 1980s, 90s building all of a sudden popping like new, and the real estate comps are done on square footage. And so, it's one of these things where redoing your value we can see a 25% appreciation pop. Redoing your exterior, we can see a 25% appreciation pop. So something to consider, and ask your realtor. There's always associations always have some kind of a designer or architect, some kind of contractor, some kind of real estate professional in them, and just say, hey, is our building going to be worth more if it looks like this and then this? And they can answer that question. Okay, renderings, the concept of renderings. So take us through this, Jessica. What are renderings useful for?
Oh, just seeing all the possibilities. A lot of times, a lot of board members can't envision what it's going to look like. And the picture sells it. So being able to show what it could look like gets people excited. It makes people want to get involved with the process, lend their input or expertise potentially into it. And so, it's an easy and cheap way to figure out, will blue look good on the siding here? Or we really like the idea of glass guardrails. What is it going to look like? What can we really see through those glass guardrails? Or should we do more of a privacy guardrail? And so it's just such an easy way to envision what all the possibilities are for the building.
Yeah, it's a thought exercise. Thought exercises are free, to a certain extent, but just having a plan and, listening to contractors. If you don't have a graphical representation of what you're asking me to bid, I can't. You have this vision in your head. So get a designer, put it on paper, give me a set of plans, and I can give you an accurate bid and know exactly what's in it and what's not in it. We don't have a misunderstanding. It's shown. And so it really helps the contractors as well. But yeah, putting folks, putting a big poster board in the lobby saying, this is what, we're asking for an assessment to fix the damage. This is what the building's going to look like. And it usually gets people excited and they say, I don't want to pay for it. It's one more bill, but that does look pretty cool. And so it brings buy-in to the process. The rendering process is also nice. We'll do like a 3 kind of, here's 3 examples. People end up taking, I want the railings from that one or the blue on that and the trim on that. Can you combine it into one more? And kind of picking and choosing, and kind of Jessica can talk about how that works well.
Yeah. So a lot of times there are, like Jen said, we'll kind of cherry pick from each of the options. I can create a final option, but I can also kind of, if everyone is really interested in it, oh, we really like stone veneer. It looks great on the building, but what would it look like if there's no stone veneer, if in the event it just is out of our price range or out of our budget? I kind of want a backup option, and will it look good if we get rid of the stone and make it, fiber cement siding, and do we still like that design? And so it lets owners and boards kind of see more than one option based on their budget.
And
into the process.
Think through it. Do I have to remove that brick or can I just cover it? What if I just covered it? It would be a little bit thicker. Is that thickness going to be funny looking? No, actually it's kind of bold. It pops out. So yeah, no renderings.
What if we paint the brick instead of removing it? We don't always have to remove every material on every project. And honestly, I like keeping some of the integrity of the original buildings intact, if that's what the owners would like. Right.
And from a recycling project, the best thing you can do is keep this building out of the landfill. Let's restore it. Let's repair it. And that's exactly what we're talking about. So just repairing what you need to do and redoing the exterior cladding is very sustainable. Okay, the challenges, the alternates we heard about. Do I paint the brick? Do I cover the brick? Do I, what about stone? What about this? What about that? Talk about the challenges to that.
The fewer the options, the better. It makes it easier for the contractor to bid. And if there are too many alternates, they just say, yikes, this is a lot of work. We don't know if we want to work on this project. So choosing your alternate strategically is important, but not necessarily a deal breaker when it comes to the contractors, especially depending on the complexity of them. But the alternates allow you to see, okay, my project came in at, $1 million, and we're really hoping to get it down to maybe like 750. We can have those certain elements priced out so that you can see, okay, well, we really liked this, but it's X amount of dollars. So maybe next renovation, or maybe we can steal from this area so we can get those railings, and kind of see where we can what baskets we can put our money in to meet our budget. And it's just so beneficial to see those dollar amounts. And it really helps sell the concept to the owners to say, hey, we went through this pricing exercise. This is how much it's going to cost. And so that people don't panic when they say, oh my goodness, it's stone, it's too expensive. It's like, well, it's in a small area and here's the actual number, and it's not that expensive. And look at what it does for the aesthetics of the building.
Yep. And that's kind of that third bullet there. Putting too many choices in front of people sometimes is choice exhaustion or whatever you want to call that. And so we do counsel the boards to say, look, make a decision. We can always show people our homework if they protest too much and say, well, we looked at that and here's what it cost. But putting too many ideas in front of them kind of stresses people out, and it's hard to get consensus on it. But that last bullet, we're not, we want your building to look good, but ultimately this is your building and your investment. If you're too crazy, we'll tell you and we'll walk away. But for the most part, it's like, well, here's what we'd recommend you do to your building. You just want to do some of that. Okay, that's fine. You're in charge. It's your building. Nobody's kicking your door down and making you do these particular things. So The client is always in charge. And getting the colors figured out, we can do a lot of things on Zoom, but talk about the live demonstration or mock-ups.
Oh yeah, colors. I always joke it's the most difficult decision you will make during the entire process is what colors do you want to see on your building, because it brings out everybody's opinions on what they think is best. And so I think it's really important to also let people know that just because it looks good on the computer screen doesn't necessarily mean it will look good in your hands, but also I take everything outside in all weather types. So I go look at it in the sun. I go look at it in a shade, different elevations, because the color completely changes depending on the lighting. So I really go through the exercise to make sure that, this gray isn't going to look purple when it goes actually on the building. And so, and even before that, the contractor always does mock-ups so that you can see. They'll build a mock-up wall, or sometimes they'll even paint a small section on the building if it's ready. So you can see it and you'll get final buy-off. So there is that final opportunity to say, oh, this gray isn't quite what we were thinking. Let's make it a little bit lighter or a little bit darker. And there's always the opportunity to make those changes before the whole building is painted.
Yeah. And on design decision day or week around the office, there is tile samples and paint samples and all the stuff all over the floor. And I know Jessica and their team are making decisions for somebody. So it's exciting to see, even though we have to walk around it. So, okay. So take us through our design process flow chart and what it means.
Yep. We have a couple milestones. So Jen's calls bus stops in the process. So once a project enters into the design phase, I will meet with the group, whether it's the board or design committee, and we'll kind of go over, what do you want to see in your building? I want to give you what you want. So we'll talk about materials. We'll talk about if there's any elements on the building that are unique to your building, of what do you want to do with this? There's an entry, or there's a rooftop deck. What are your thoughts on that? We'll talk about material choices and maintenance. And that information will give me an idea of what do you want to see in your building, so that I can generate renderings. And then for the most part, we will get it 90% decided on in terms of renderings, and then we'll enter the scope development phase. And that's where I will really break down the scope into all the assemblies. What are we doing on the roof? What are we doing at the ridge and at the eave and at the venting, and what are the shingles going to be? What's the insulation look like? And I'll do that for all the assemblies on the project, and I'll send out, we call it a memo, send it to the board members so that there's some communication as to, here's what we anticipate the scope to be. Are you on board with this? Did I miss anything? Is anything incorrect? And if we're good to go, I'll continue to break that memo up even further and make it much more detailed, so that the contractor has a set of drawings and specifications that are very particular to your building. And we call those the bid documents. And the contractors will use those drawings and specifications to put their numbers together. And it's super important that we have those so that everybody's working off the same set of documents. So we can just say, oh, what's it going to be? It's going to be lap siding. Well, what manufacturer, what reveal size? Is it this texture? Is it that texture? So it really gives you a good idea of what this will cost and how the contractors are pricing out each of those items. We'll get those numbers back. We will meet with the HOA, and then if necessary, but depending on where the cost of the project comes in, we can go through a value engineering phase where, like I kind of mentioned on earlier, it's like, well, we wanted the project to be at this amount, but it really came in at this. So now where can we give and take to get us in that, ballpark budget that we were hoping to meet for the project? Mm-hmm. And then once all those elements are decided, if we're doing this alternate or that alternate, or maybe we have to phase the project, well, I'll create a final set of drawings. Those are the construction drawings, and those get sent to the city for permit. And that's what the contractor is going to build off of.
Mm-hmm. And then the record documents are just as-built documents at the end of the job.
Yep.
Hey, here's what we found. We found an old water line that's dashed on here, or this was slightly changed by this RFI or this submittal. And here's the actual as-built. So those come at the end. But yeah, each I call them bus stops, and I'm always pushing a little bit to say, is there any express bus? Do we have to stop at every bus stop here? It's taking a long time, and Jessica and team remind me, okay, what stop do you want to skip? Do you want to skip scope development? Do you want to skip it? You know, of course not. But one process, and we're getting into the next slide a little bit, is just being methodical about this, but also documenting your decisions along the way. Because here's what happens: the board changes, the managers change, you know, the project changes. And, you know, hey, I was on the board when you started this design and I wanted pink tile, and now the tile's gray. What, you know, you guys screwed up. Well, no, we actually didn't. Here's the design meeting that says now we want gray, and this is why we bid it the way we bid it, or the contractors bid it. And it's good to, you know, especially in the value engineering of, you know, we want to save money, so we're going to save that metal siding. And, you know, hey, why did you only do one wall of work and not the other three walls? I thought you were going to do everything. Or, you know, 5 years ago you worked on our building, and that one wall leaks now. Well, we didn't do it. Remember, we took that wall out of it to save some money. And here's the milestones that are documented each way along the way. So it's helpful to do that. When, you know, I know it's exciting. I see that rendering in the lobby. I want that right now. I want this to be done. But we're encouraging patience and, you know, being methodical about it. How long does a typical design process take if we're not as busy as we normally as we are?
It really depends. Once the rendering is selected and I have a good idea of what materials we're using, it's usually a 12-week process.
Okay.
It really depends on, are we doing additional meetings? Are there decisions that still need to be made that I can't finalize those few details at the end of, do you want windows in your doors or glass in your doors? Do you not want them? Like, so the little things can take time, but for the most part, it's typically 12 weeks to get it to that permit, right, or that the bid ready set.
And that has a little bit of built-in time for boards as well. Hey, we want to take that to the next HOA meeting. We're going to vote on that. Or the board only meets once a month, and can you come to our board meeting and present? And so it kind of starts jiving with your schedule as well. So it may feel like a long time, but you'll have a nice complete set of drawings and plans. And that'll take us to this next slide of permitting. Why do I need a permit? You know, do you want to talk about this, Jessica?
Sure. I mean,
I have things to say, but
yeah. I mean, permits are important. They prove that the city has reviewed it, they've approved it, you're following all the codes, the design standards. Some properties are located in certain zones that you can't use certain colors or certain materials, or that really cool awning that we wanted to put on the front. Can't do it anymore because there's some rules because it's in a business district or something to that effect. So permitting kind of is a safeguard for anyone walking down the street to be like, you can't do that, and here's why. And also make sure that you have a good contractor on board, that they're licensed. And yes, it adds time to the project, it adds cost, but it is really, it's a hard concrete set of drawings that you can hold the contractor accountable for.
Yes. So the last one, contract tie-in. Again, back to that. Here is a graphical representation and a description. Thou shalt use this, and I'm going to tie it to the contract, and the contract is giving me a price. Contractor is giving me a price for that. So this is a binding contract. And when they decide to do whatever else they do, it's like, wait a minute, come on back to the contract. Here's what the plans and specs say. You promised to do this. I'm going to hold you accountable to that. And so we had a terribly sad story of, we had a public library that was built by volunteers inside an old structure. The old structure failed. And so the whole thing had to be condemned and torn down. And it was because they didn't check the big structure before they built the little structure inside it. And so you can just kind of, and what Jessica was saying, of The beautiful new color, you can't use it. Beautiful new siding project, it's a historical district. You can't use that. Or not to mention aesthetic architectural boards and rules and laws in HOAs. Warranties. I mean, the manufacturer is looking for a way to get out of any kind of claim. Well, you didn't build that per code, and that's one of the things in my warranty. It needs to be built correctly. Bid clarity, we talked about that. Insurance. So insurance companies now, we had a previous episode where they're talking about denials and interest rates, or not interest rates, their fees, their insurance rates are going up. And they're, your property isn't built per code. That's a good reason to raise insurance rates or cancel you. Banks. So if you're going to get a loan, they want to see that there's a licensed contractor, an architect or designer overseeing this work, plans and specifications, a building permit before they will give that loan. And so while I don't like to run around and be the moral permitting police, it's best practice. It's you need to do it. And so there's exclusions and exemptions from certain types of work, and we will help you through that. But doing the right thing is usually the right thing. So anything else to add to that? I don't know. Permitting, just wanted to throw it in there.
It's not a fun phase, but it's a necessity.
Stamped drawings. If you have to have them stamped by an engineer or an architect, that shows that somebody has some professional liability. Somebody like J2 has an insurance policy and professional liability, is a licensed professional to be able to do this work. And so the building department likes to see that. Not to mention fines and red tape and lawsuits, and if you don't. So anyway, we'll let that lie. Okay. Need an inspection? Talk one-on-one with me. If any of this stuff sounds good, set up a 15-minute call with me. Here's the link. You can use your QR code scanner on your phone to scan that in. And Ben has probably put my information in the chat. So now it's time for Q&A. This is always the best part. And so we've got, whoops, I jumped to giveaways. I like giveaways too. And so we've got some Q&A in here. So if you entered things into the chat, I'm not even going to look at that. Ben's going to copy and paste them into the Q&A. Okay. On the design side, how far can you go before it encroaches on the architect's turf? Good question from Michael. Thank you. So for codes and things like that, we have it stamped with an architect. And from the design side, we're dealing with the building envelope or the building's raincoat. So the waterproofing and flashings and coatings and things like that. The whole building is much more architecture. And so egress and room size and door swing and safety and all those things. For our engineers stamping things, is that beam big enough? We're replacing these beams because they're, they have water damage. And so is it the right beam? Is it the right number of bolts and nails and hardware? So our engineers will stamp that as well. So encroaching on the architect's turf, we're the same. So and that's a question to ask your designer. Do you have a licensed professional that will stamp plans? And that's what the building department requires, and that's what we provide. And so design, paint design, interior design, those are landscape design. There's landscape architects, interior design, colors, carpets, tiles, fabrics, the look, the feel. Yeah. So those are all things that we talk about and walk you guys through. Let's see. The next question, fee proposal. Yeah, I don't understand that question. I think it's more in the chat comment. There we go. Ignore that remark. The real question is, why does it take over a year to get a city building department permit for a project that's been identified as having life safety issues? And the example is some stairs crumbling. Yes. So building department, we every governmental department was bombed with the COVID shutdowns and in-person stuff. And so they figured out how to take that online. Again, with a booming economy of construction, the building departments are backed up everywhere. I was doing some additional continuing education training yesterday, and the state of Utah is saying, you know what, it's just too much of a hassle for us to update these codes every 3 years. We're going to update residential codes every other cycle, every 6 years. It's too expensive for us to buy code books and train all our inspectors and do all this stuff. So that's a state issuing legislation that says we're dealing with this backed up, building department stuff. As far as shoring and life safety issues, we can get it shored right away, but to keep it from falling over. But as far as repairing it, they're next in line. Some of the building departments have even started an expediting permit service. What's it called? Faster permits or something. You basically pay a premium to cut in front of the line, and it feels a little extortion-y to me from the government, but it is what it is. And that's where each building department is a little different. And some are high maintenance and others are, sure, we'll give it to you over the counter. It's called when you walk up to the counter and you submit your plans, they see it stamped. They go, that's fine. Stamp. Here's your permit. Go. So we get a lot of complaints with delay. It's not our fault, but the building department is swamped as well. So.
And even those over-the-counter permits are not as common anymore as they used to be, right? Because they'll say it has to match in like kind. You take that beam out, right. It's a 4x8, it has to go back by 4x8. But our engineers say, well, but it's cheaper if you use a steel beam, or if you go to this size that's more common, or something to that effect. And the city says, nope, that's a change. You can't do it over counter anymore. And now you need to go to the back of the line. So there it is. Even those quick, like over-the-counter things are not as straightforward as they should be, unfortunately. And every city is always backed up. And, even some of the smaller jurisdictions, 12 to 16 weeks out, it's like, whoa, like I feel like last month it was like, here's your permit, have fun.
Right. And it's like traffic on any highway. You predict it to be bad, but you go in there and you get a permit and it's like, hey, what just happened? So it goes like this, and you just never know, and you just got to jump in and get it done.
I've started I've learned the hard way, or I guess to start to pester the cities to say, hey, this has been sitting for 3 weeks and I haven't got an email on it. Can you just can you update me? What's going on with this? And like, oh yeah, I'll sign that to a reviewer. It's like, yes, had I not called or not followed up or put a little bit of pressure on them, who knows how long it would have sat for. And so I've started to learn to put on my calendar, I submitted it this date, follow up 2 weeks later, what's going on 2 weeks later. Some portals are better. They track the progress of when it's being assigned and when it's due. Some other portals are very not user friendly. So it's just, it just takes a call and they say, yep, it's good to go. And the nicer I am, they tend to be nice back. So, even though might be seeing red as how long this is taking, and I'm so angry about those permit fees, but they're doing the best they can, and it's a working relationship.
Permit fees, you said a nasty word. Especially dealing with projects with multiple buildings, the building department says, wait a second, that's a different building with a different address, so that needs its own permit. So I've got 40 buildings on a current project, and the permit fees are $20,000. And it's like, why in the world do I have to pay that? Well, we've got 40 permits, and each has a minimum fee and a minimum this and a minimum that. And so, yeah, until we can sort through some of that on a higher level, I mean, we walk them through. This is just doing a roof. This is just replacing the siding. We're not building anything new. So don't charge me for toilets and sinks and stuff like that. But some are sticklers, and it just is what it is.
Some jurisdictions will reduce those fees because a lot of the times when I do have to break them out into 40 separate sets, the bulk of the information is the same. So I will call them ahead of time and say, here's the situation. I don't want to pay you to do a full review on 40
Right.
of these when they're identical except for one sheet. So can we work together and have a reduction on fees
Mhm.
for, the other 39? See, and usually they're pretty amicable about that request, and they will give us a reduction in fees. So it's just, all it takes is a call.
Yep. Okay, next question from Linda. Will insurance be okay with a rooftop fire pit? Oh, there's lots of fires on rooftops. The it's a function of the unit or the fire pit, how it's enclosed, how it's, all its safety ratings, and that's the manufacturer. Yeah, a wide open wood fire on top of a roof, probably not, but there are definite fireplaces and gas, in restaurants, it's the gas fire pit. It's rated for its safety ratings and things like that. But in the yard examples, yeah, we've seen just wood burning things, and people are sitting around, kind of a campfire and smelling camp smoky when they're done. So, but yeah, it's something you can ask your insurance company about. And Michael chimed in, fire marshal often has the final say. Yep, you bet, 100%. So
also something to think about is the material that the fire pit is sitting on top of. So just be careful, lace down some non-combustible materials. We can help you with that, make some suggestions, but we definitely don't want you putting a charcoal grill on, a roof membrane or, something that can melt and then potentially cause leaks.
Yep. So a couple of anonymous questions here. Is it hard to generate those design renderings? Yes. So how many options do we get? We normally put into our proposals, 2 to 3 options and then a final. If you want more, yeah, they're, I don't know, are they a couple of grand per time? I mean, usually the final renderings is make this blue instead of red, but it's the building, it's the fly around, it's the kind of the 3D model, etc. So
yeah, generating the models and showing the different types of siding possibilities, those take a while. But like Jen said, if I want to see what is this going to look like if it's blue or pink, I can make those changes, and that's a really quick change, and I can regenerate the image and send that out relatively quickly. It's the material location changes that add to the timeline of the rendering generation. So it does take a couple weeks because it does take a while to build those models.
Okay. Next question. In your experience, is it hard to get boards to agree on which design to go with? And do they tend to choose the cheapest option, even if they don't like the look as much? Ooh, first question. Yeah, of course.
It's hard. Everyone's got an opinion because there's always someone who doesn't think the project needs to happen at all. And then there's one that wants the gold-plated version. And so I try and meet in the middle and reassure them that, we're selecting materials that will last longer, they'll perform better, and you won't have to take care of them as much as your potential siding.
Right.
There's a cost and, pros and cons to everything. For the most part, I feel like they usually come around, and ultimately if there's a really split decision, it comes down to getting the owners to vote on the 2 options, and then it's nobody's fault that it was selected. Everybody selected that final decision. So it sometimes takes a little nudging in one direction, and then there's some boards are like, that one, no changes, go.
Right.
And it's great.
Right. Yep. Or my husband picked this back in 1971 and I want to stay with that. I was like, okay, we're doing beige stucco. All right, great. But do they always tend to choose the cheapest one? No. I don't think so. And then they kind of surprise us too. It's sometimes they'll get focused on a very expensive element, and it's like we're telling them you don't have the money to do that, but it's your money, so get ready, brace yourself. Here come the prices.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the alternates, because like I had one where like we really like that stone, but let's price out what would it look like if it's just, or what would it come out to be if it was just fiber cement, or what if we, instead of on the whole first floor, what if we just put it at the entry? So there are strategic locations as to what we can do with those more expensive materials to make them an accent, but not a budget buster.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, next question. How do you approach a reskin or a re-siding when building is either in a historic district or has historic designation itself? Have you worked with SHPO? I'm not sure what that acronym is. What about the challenging design review commissions such as Portland? And yes, we've worked in historic districts both in Seattle and Portland. I'm guessing at that SHPO. And you got to meet with them. They usually have a standard book. They have a standard of guidelines. You can meet with them, talk to them. And they can be picky like a permit department and want full review and full thoroughness, but other ones have been flexible, saying, I know what you're trying to achieve. Can I use these modern materials that will last longer and be more sustainable? And they may jump on that bandwagon as well and say, yes, I like, thank you for keeping the theme. That's cool. The material selection you want. But others are, nope, has to be exactly these materials. And we can't even find those, or they're just so expensive. Clear vertical grain cedar. And it's like, ooh, wow. Okay. Do you have historic stuff, Jessica?
There were, up in Washington, we had a project where we wanted to use lap siding with a 7-inch reveal, and they came back and said, you can't use that. And I said, yes, I can. And they got a rule book. And so what we did was went around to all the buildings around that property and measured the lap siding and said, well, you allowed it on this building and this building and this building. So can you work with us? Because this is what was bid, and to go to a different size, it's X amount of dollars extra. And they said, oh, okay, yeah, let's just go for it. It's approved. Go ahead and use it. So sometimes it's a conversation. There's other times where, like Jen said, nope, it says right here in this section, you cannot do this. You cannot use backlit address signs. It's like,
right.
But there's no site lighting because it's on the water, and there's all these rules about lights and how are the fire trucks supposed to find this building? And
right.
So that it was, there's ways around it. There's ways to make it work. And I think that just having those discussions with the city, the renderings are very helpful to say, here's what we're thinking. So when I say metal siding, it might generate something in their head when in reality, I'm thinking something completely different. So those renderings are very helpful for everybody, not just the reviewers, the contractors, the owners. They're pretty crucial.
Great. Okay, we've got some more questions. You guys are awesome with the questions, but I know we're pushing up on that hour limit here. So we're going to bomb through these other ones. Despite a robust design, construction errors can ruin everyone's day. Yes, they can. Do you participate in contractor selection? Yes. Do you encourage owners to have third-party project managers? Us. Do you do site observations and inspections of the work? Yes. And so do we participate in contractor selection? We will bring you, 3. We like to keep it at, 3 for a competitive bid process, not 5. You get what's called estimate exhaustion, and they just, I don't have time for this. I've got a 20% chance versus a 33% chance versus a 50-50 chance. And so we will bring good quality contractors to you that have experience in occupied remediation, that we know their work is good, that they have insurance for condominium work because it's a specific insurance exclusion in many states or in many policies that they can't work on condos unless they pay a premium. And so we will bring you good bidders. We put it out to bid and help you decide. Again, you're choosing. And do they always choose the lowest one? No, not necessarily. And so, but we definitely want you to have third-party inspections. In Washington, that's a statute. And we can fill that role as the designer. We can also inspect it and make sure the design is being put together correctly. So next answer, can you talk about phased work on occupied buildings? Yes, occupied remediation is all we do. We don't do any new work. So phased work, there's a couple of different phases. I would talk about, you have 10 buildings, say. We're going to start with buildings 1 through 3 and do the demo. And the demo crew will move to 4, 5, and 6 while the siding crew rolls in or the window crew rolls in, and then demo, windows, siding, and the contractor can work their way around this. So Not everything's torn off all at once. It doesn't look like a war zone. And then you see buildings getting put together as you go through this project. Another phase would be, we're going to do our whatever south walls this year and north walls next year, or our decks this year and roofs next year. And so phasing the work to kind of break it up into bite-sized chunks. You can do that in more of targeted fixed jobs. So let's see, another question. Can you talk about cost contingencies at the different phases of design? The big issue with existing is the dreaded hidden conditions. I assume there is selective demolition to determine scope, but it's hard to have a crystal ball. Yeah, okay. What this question is talking about is it's important to do an investigation up front so that you understand what's under that siding. Is just the sheathing damaged, or is the framing damaged, and how much of the framing is damaged? And if the framing's damaged, I know my interior drywall is screwed to the studs. So if I'm pulling out studs, I'm also pulling out interior drywall. Or, if it's just 2 inches of the stud, I can be careful. But if it's the entire wall, and now I need to move people out of that bedroom or bathroom, or so that's really the important factor of doing an inspection up front. Inspections and contingencies and extrapolations are a common question. Obviously, this industry is based on extrapolation, meaning we can do 6 to 10 openings and have a good idea of what's going on and set some allowances or contingencies for damage. I don't think anybody expects us to pull off 100% of your siding to verify that there's damage there or not, and then pull off the siding again. And so, but doing an investigation that's not just visual, that gets a little deeper, sees if we've got, water damage and whatever inside the walls. And maybe we'll find some, hey, you don't even have gyp sheathing here that's now required by fire code. So when we tear this off, we have to add a layer of gypsum sheathing. So those are really good things to do. One more question on there from Michael. So unit costs come into play. Either unit costs or allowances or percentages. Assume 10% of framing damage. Assume 50% framing damage. Assume $1,500 per unit of interior repairs. Well, some units are going to require 0. Other units are require, 2,000, 3,000. The hope is that it comes out in averages, or, we have enough money to do the job. And yeah, unit costs, we definitely ask hourly rates, unit costs, all that's in the bid documents. So we don't get surprised when they give us a change order for $500 an hour. It's like, wait a minute, we've already agreed on all the unit costs. So last question, if the project is not in lawsuit, do you ever work with the original architect or builder? Yes and yes. And so 1% of the time, even if it is in lawsuit, we've had the original developer or the original builder or the original architect, usually not so much the architect. The designs are pretty accurate. It's installation errors primarily. And a couple of times we've had, the developer saying, look, I'm working across the street. I want a good reputation. I'm going to come in and fix my problems. Allow me to fix it. You can watch me. I'll pay your fees, that kind of thing. And that's partly negotiated with the HOA. If it's not in lawsuit, do we ever work with the original? If there's it just depends. If there's a problem, do we want the company who created the problem to come back and try to fix it? Well, they had their chance to do it right in the first time, and they kind of screwed it up. Some states have a right to cure, and so you have to talk to your attorney about that. They get first shot to fix it. But we can walk you through that legal process as well. If the original architect wants to be helpful, a lot of times they go, there's a problem. Whoops, click, they hang up. But if they want to be helpful and, hey, here's the plans, here's all the CAD stuff, you don't have to recreate this. Yeah, let's partner on this, and let's help these people. So great questions, folks. Good. That's all of them. Now we're getting over to the giveaways. And let's see, Ben, what do we have for giveaways? Do we have the coffee and mugs and stuff like that? We're going to ask Ben, the producer, to unmute.
Yep, that's the one. Some coffee, perfect for this colder weather.
Yeah. All right. J2 Brew. It's widely, it's very popular. So, Jessica, pick a number between 1 and 17, and Ben will find out what list they are on the list and get to them, and we'll send that away to you as the winner.
All right, let's do 12.
Number 12. Number 12 wins the box of coffee and stickers and cups and J2 swag, etc. Okay, so last few little announcements. Did you know we have free resources for board managers? Go to learn.j2consultants.com/resources. And we've got 300 videos on YouTube. And be sure to check our streaming channels. That's the next slide. But don't forget, we'll be back at the end of each month. We're usually on the last Tuesday of every month, but we've got a little note there saying, wait a minute, the last Tuesday of October is Halloween. Nobody wants to come to a webinar when we're getting ready to go trick-or-treating. So we're going to be doing it October 24th. It'll be the third or second to last Tuesday this next month. Yes. So, all right, tune in then. And then streaming. So classic episodes of the Building Doctor Show are now available on all major streaming platforms. So you can listen to all the old stuff. I'd encourage you to go back to listen to the very first episode and see how far we've come. It'll be comical. I am actually afraid to listen to that first episode. No, anyway. Okay. Thank you, Jessica, for joining us. Design has been wonderful. It's fun to talk about, fun to plan for. Hopefully we've given you some good insights into this and that you can take to your future planning. And if you need professional help, please reach out. Jessica, do you have any goodbye words?
No, I love talking about design. So if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me and I can help in any way I can.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See ya.